In the peculiar game called Hearts of Iron 4, there are a lot of mechanics that get released and get quickly swept under the rug because no one ever bothers to use them. After playing this game for 2,474 hours, which equates to around 100 goddamn days I spent in it, I can say with confidence I rarely use the puppet mechanics. As the puppet, I must say. Of course, probably every game I am the puppeteer, but not the puppeted. And that's something I was going to do today. You see, I record the amazing series of Democracy A to Z, and the time has come for me to play as the Dutch East Indies. And if their name weren't enough for you, they are a puppet of the Dutch. It also just happens that I know about a mod that will spice up the experience of playing as this country, and the link to it will obviously be in the description. And I must actually say that I am looking forward to this campaign, as it's not usual start to be a scion of another nation, especially in the place that the East Indies are placed. Although, as the law of equivalent says, there must be counterbalance, which I provided earlier by turning the historical AI off. And then the first day as the Dutch East Indies, I got lore bombed into oblivion and I acted like I was reading through it, but to be completely honest with you, after 2 minutes I had already forgotten what the lore was about. I also had a glance at the national spirits ahead, and I must say that I haven't seen so much red in a long time. Like, most of the time, yeah, there are like 2 or 3 spirits that are bad, but here, it's like my spirits were dominated by Blood's gang on the streets. An interesting dilemma then appeared, as there were a few options on how to approach the democratic things. And yes, I could have remained a loyal puppet and a servant to the Dutch, but who wants that? Especially in times where Hitler is an anime girl ready to pound on said Dutchman. That is why I had to decide to go a more selfish way of breaking from the chains and becoming independent. The democratic branch over there would let you to join the Japanese faction, and I prayed to Jeebus that they wouldn't go communist, as it was the only requirement to join their faction. But before hitting the road of unshackling ourselves, we addressed the Malays to make the economy better. At a random point in time, some guy had a birthday, and I saw that there would be consequences if I chose the wrong option, and as my mind was not developed enough, I couldn't decipher which way would let me go into independence. So I just clicked the lower one and continued with industry. Even more of random events popped up with a dilemma of either gaining a tiny bit of stability, or support, or political power, and I just took whatever I could. Also, the reason I chose to go independent instead of cooperating with the Dutch is that there is so much randomness in which path they will choose, and I just couldn't be bothered with waiting until they choose to stay democratic, because they probably wouldn't, and I would have been literally nowhere. But the turning point was when I saw the blue color in the Japanese party chart. That gave me the ultimate confidence to declare the independence war after some time, because it also gave the most claims, scores, and war goals later on. So I go on to discourage the democratic reforms, which sound counterintuitive, yes, but stay with me now. We make the people supporting democracy feel so bad they will riot and protest, and then we join them and overthrow the current regime. So I revived the spirit of 1926, and later on do exactly as I just said, and encourage the international nationalists to make a move. And the spirit also made me be able to bump up the status of puppet viewer, so that the stinky Dutch were no longer stealing 100% of my factories and manpower. I then spied my way into the British and realized that it was the best possible scenario for us, which was that Britain did decolonize. And it was great, as let's be real, Malaysia doesn't have real troops nor industry to fight me, and it would make a great addition, as they would be able to form a nation and core all of their lands. And then I entrusted our whole nation into youth and already started to meddle in relations with Tetsu. And I guess I will leave it to your imagination what focus expel the colonialists do. But I'm gonna be real with you, we will kill them all. But to make them fall, we first have to address the military issues. Also, the annoying thing with being on these cursed islands are the fucking front lines, and overall how the AI divisions work. You will see later on in the video, tens of divisions stacked on one tile not moving because the clankers, they're just not clanking enough. The revolution was going fairly well. I mean, it is after all constructed for people with brain disability to win these civil wars. But I couldn't help but notice that the Dutch have stolen a bit of our lands, which has made an eternal grudge that I will not be forgetting, no matter the cost. And as I say, the revolution is successful in just around a month, even before I could finish the military issue. After the issue that was technically never there was a small so-called cock-block, as the Japanese didn't have a faction yet, but it was just a matter of time they would create it. And also I named division Sword of Fox, in the glory of my faithful supporter Mr. Fox on Patreon. Talking about divisions, I had to get some new idea about what to use this campaign, and it all went down to Marines. But not Marines with invasion buffs, Marines with jungle buffs, as well, this shit is packed with jungles and tropical forests. Unfortunately, whilst doing so, our president dies, but gets quickly replaced by none other than a I don't know who this guy is, but he will do. And then another thing about the army is that I decided to go with recruitment of the locals instead of recruitment in the east. And I forgot to say that the recruitment I chose was a grave mistake, as I did block myself in the future quite a bit, but onto that later. The navy branch, I opted for the dominant navy, but it was only an illusion of choice, as I would not be building any navy, unless we're talking about stealing it. Let's take a look at the world now. What is this? And then the few random factions, but overall not as bad as it could be. Formidable enemies? Yeah, makes sense. Finally, after all this time, Japan decided to break the faction, not only making them a big power on the world stage, but allowing me to finally progress into more aggressive foreign policy. Which starts with me planning defeat naval invasions on our neighbor Malaya. Tetsu of course welcomes us into West Pacific Treaty Organization, and I opt for expansionist agenda. Hells, even the public wants us to rearm more. As the focus finishes, I declare war, and well, as I said earlier, they don't stand any chance, especially that AI is brain dead against naval invasions made by player at this time. I annex them, and the nation of East Indies Confederacy rises up. To expand even further, I accepted the call to arms from Mr. Tetsu, as I thought it wouldn't be too bad against the Germans. Well, let me tell you, there were few other wars during this campaign, but this war kept on going until 1960s. Quick recap to the army though. In the focus tree, there was a dilemma once again. Either I could go local militias or quantity over quality, and guess what? I of course chose the worst fucking option of local militias, basically forcing myself into mass assault doctrine. But you don't even need a doctrine when it comes to capitulating Manchuria, and that was what I did. Even though a bunch of my generals were older than your granddad, I had to retire from the army. We pushed so far that the Kwantungan territories fall, and I take on the job to building a road to every fucking village in this country to get extra bonuses from the national focus. And then about the war with the Axis, I, as a very reasonable man would do, I sent my troops over there, and I was literally provinces from Berlin, because the anime girl was probably too occupied with dealing with the Soviet front. As they were occupied, I could sneakily attacked by Siam. They launched some kind of invasion on me, and I had to forcefully deploy grenadiers back at home island. And you know, they were making some clashes, etc., but the clashes are so stupidly made that I just decided to use a war goal I had on them for no apparent reason. And then my ADHD was going overboard, as these fuckers were making some moves in Germany and in France, and yeah, there it is, France eaten halfway there. You can guess what I did, or let me tell you. I fiercely evacuated my troops from there, because I didn't want to make this whole army anew. The grenadiers were only holding the line at the Siamese border until my main army came back and Naval invaded their back. As I said earlier, the clankers don't have the ability to hear that an invasion is coming, so everything is left open. I also couldn't help but notice that I was at war with the Philippines, and I knew I had claims on them later on, but I don't know how I did manage to fight them now, and I made my favorite maneuver of octopussing, and I invade their little islands, which yet again stand no real threat and get annexed, as I've set a bunch of more naval invasions on their back. But to take over a nation, there is not really a conquest you need. There is a focus in this tree that pressures Siam so hard that they change their government and become your bitch. Yes, even though they are capitulating and we are fighting against them, but they still did accept. And even though I wanted to give them their own land, they just fucking wouldn't get them. So I guess it's more under direct control now, which I have nothing against. And whilst we were on the topic of attacking other island nations in the Pacific, I couldn't have let the prison island get by, and I had to invade them. And it did help that they were communist, as it made them so weak. Only a few naval invasions on the east coast were needed. And of course, I could have not forgotten about Papua New Guinea. In the peace deal though, I couldn't even get all of the Philippines. But then again, it was some weird peace conference. It wasn't the Axis, it was some weird faction with a bunch of Central American fodder in them. Do you remember in the start of the game, the horrors we had to endure? We were called the Dutch East Indies. We had no rights, even our land was taken from us. It has come time for vengeance, and it only makes it easier that the Dutch Reich is under the German sphere of influence. That's when we got rid of all of Axis existence on the Pacific Islands. Even the rest of Philippines were liberated and swept under our control. Intermission before I forget about that one thing. And yeah, somewhere here was an event about the conference, because I've held off enough against the Dutch and annexed the islands in here, and it white beast me with Germans and the Axis. And I say this because I noticed that later in the video I transferred troops to Germany, even though I said I was at war with them. To even further our liberation, for some reason I was in the war with Fourth International, and you can just guess what I did. Massive naval invasion of the coast of communist China. I'm gonna stop you there. When and where did I declare the war on the Fourth International? Because I swear in the last few campaigns I miraculously get dragged into wars I have no interest in. Like, did I click some bullshit call to arms, or did they declare war on me? It sometimes doesn't make any sense, and you know, sometimes it gets really tedious, making me finish some wars I never even wanted to participate in. Yeah, I don't have anything against this for now, as they they are on the brink of collapse and I can steal some lands, as for some reason the front lines are basically open, until I get stopped because I don't have resources to man the front line. But there is nothing that a little bit of micromanage can't do, thus I push along the coastline and push few of my divisions deeper into hardline China, and ultimately they fall, sending us to peace conference in which I take a fair share of China and the other islands. Looking at the world faction wise, I'd say we are a powerful team, especially on the sea, but the Axis did look a bit too strong. Way too strong. That's why I chose to declare war on the United Kingdom, who still had India under their belt, and Australia, they got round 2 of what happened to them earlier. Whilst invading the Australia though, there was a brief lag and the Treaty of Tokyo. Turns out Japan was in fight with the US and Greater Germanic Reich. In the end, they fell and got split between them, making me the owner of West Pacific Treaty thingy. So I took matter into my hands and decided to not fight them, but joined them, disbanding my faction and joining the US, as we were the last democratic nations and we couldn't afford to fight against each other, and we really needed to combine our forces as they also started to get into my home islands. The bigger challenge might have been the British Raj. The dumpster land over there is not suitable even for themselves, but the special spider squad was enough to take them out, and I also got inspired to create a motorized divisions consisting of people on wheelchair. Taking a look at the allies, they were on the edge of collapse. Only the Union was left, so my faithful anime ally allowed me to get close and try to make naval enemies. And my favorite part of all this, waiting for months until a second of naval supremacy ticks onto my side. And I did. I invaded Liverpool, although with the amount of people that don't brush their teeth over there, it was impossible to hold over there, and they ultimately pushed me back. So I stuck with the Sea Lion plan, which unfortunately made me wait even more for extra carriers to get supremacy. Months passed, maybe even a year, and before I could have landed, the Americans did it for me. With their actual contribution, we capitulated the British Union and stole a lot of land, but the real test would come now. The last 2 giant factions standing. USA's factions with the best protege Indonesia against the Greater Germanic Reich with not so greater Hungary. And then pushing them out of Siam? No problem. A bunch of tropical terrain which they melt in. The Canadian lands in the east? Not so easy over there, unfortunately. It is fucking late in the game and Germany owes 3/4 of the fucking world, although there is a technology that will help such circumstances. The technology that for sure wasn't kinda restricted to not kill civilian life, which we for sure will kill. I tried to do a sneak invasion of Germany once they had so much troops in America, but it was to no avail. After seeing that the Canadian front was freed from Germans, I thought about trying to kick them out of Americas before I attempt to go to their homeland. So the logical thing was to advance in the Mexican peninsula, but it was quickly halted due to me not being able to fucking move. As I even got pushed back a few times here and there. They also stroked their shit back at me, landing on my isles, as the only grenadiers that were defending it are like, I don't know, 10 widths, and then a bunch of lone Chinese divisions. And look at that! I invaded France yet again. And how did it go? You can probably guess. Over in Mexico, a slow push. A fucking sluggy push. A slower than snail's pace push. And here is it, yet again, a 15-second time-lapse of how annoyingly long and slow it was. But we finally closed this pocket and let's see the casualties. I'm sure it did hurt them, although looking that they had unlimited amount of manpower, did it really matter? Then the further push in Americas, more naval invasions, more encirclements, and even more incompetence from my dumbass AI. I could say that almost all of this shit, all of these invasions were only me. The US were only holding the lines there. Then when I got hold of a bigger strip of land, kicking them out of South America wasn't a problem, especially with the submarines doing their work, and I remember that at one point I deleted 13,000 convoys. I might not have a footage of that. And finally, after kicking them out for good, there came the time of having to invade their mainland, which I was not looking forward to. It's embarrassing how bad it went. Now I decided to go on Iberia, as they looked, I think, the worst out of all of the coastlines I had to invade, and that was the turning point. There wasn't a lot of troops over there, so I could have swooped fairly deeply in and secure safe position, although it was fairly safe for them too. And they stacked divisions over there, and it was a nightmare trying to push anywhere. I must say though that Americans held their ground too, also supplying with airplanes, so that I could unleash a project I have been secretly working on. Given the fact it's so late, I should have been spamming it all the time by now, but I wasn't aiming for such a long fucking campaign. Until then, the campaign was fairly democratic, right? Well, that's But that was about to change and or still stay the same. You know how democracy is the will of the people. I have been boosting secretly communism to be able to select the fucking focus, which needed me to either be 65% democratic or 65% communist. Well, there wasn't enough democratic support anywhere, so I had to opt for the Red Party, and I didn't focus enough until the next election came, and they casually took over the country. And as I said, we were democratic, so we had to give up the government. But democracy still lives in our hearts, and we will finish this war in its name. And we are getting there very slowly. With every nuclear explosion we push onward. There were hiccups as USA kicked me from their faction and they started losing the South, but I managed to get hold on that situation fairly quickly. And also, we are technically a socialist republic, so I guess we are still, democratic but just socialists. Then get ready, as the invasion that started the fall of Germany happened in March 1957 on northern Germany, followed by bombing of few cities. Nuclear bombing of few cities. Overall, very hard push, which literally only worked when I nuked provinces next to me. Then the war screen that looked like actual massacre and something that should get me demonetized for so many people dying. But you know how it is when rocket side nukes come into play. Tactically deploy them, but then the final 3 nukes struck after the fall of Berlin and the Greater Germanic Reich has fallen. Let me stop you there. I know that the US did its part in this war, but awarding them all of this is just a straight crime. They did not deserve this much land. Adding to it that they don't have divisions to man this, and I couldn't have closed the Germans all that much. The other majors I had to capitulate were the Manchurians and Hungarians, which easy, right? Until you realize that because Germany fell, Italy became independent, thus becoming a major fucking nation. Like, why the fuck does that happen to me? And slugging through the entire Reichskommissariat Balkan was not a dream. Hence, I even got fucking pushed back since the US had the land and it was convoluted. Then I was basically at a point right before they capitulated. And then it was a great idea to call in China so that they could take the matches by themselves. And also, who would have guessed? We had the semi-elections in our communist state, and after the leadership changed, I commenced a few bombings of Italy as well as my favorite naval invasions. And I'm not surprised they didn't have anything covered there, and I literally walked everywhere with homeless people, as I have been without manpower for probably about 2 years now or something. Finally, after so many years of fighting, the last Axis nation falls and the world is cleansed of fascism and monarchism. In the name of the people, I guess. There was a little war with Turkey, but they just got smacked instantly with nuclear warheads. And there it is, 1962. I did not expect to play this campaign for so long. I was aiming more until like the 50s max. I guess I had to play it for 16 goddamn hours. It was quite a ride. It wasn't bad in my opinion. I think the videos might be even slower now as school has started. I will pop out videos as fast as I can, but I prefer quality over quantity. So that's why they're not so often. Okay, thank you for watching guys, and I will see you next time.